In the previous videos, we already have used the instance variables, but there we have initialized the instance variables with some initial values. What will happen if we do not initialize an instance variable? In this video, I will answer this question. Namaste everyone, I am Gyan and you are watching the session 5 of Java and Web, user-defined data types. In this video, we will learn about the default values of instance variables. In this program, we have the class add, which contains two instance variables. Here the both instance variables are private. First one is integer variable I and the second one is float variable f. Then after in this class we have two methods. Both methods are non-private. One is setData and other one is showData. The execution starts from the bytecode of class main because the bytecode of class main contains the method main. So everything starts with the execution of the method main as we already seen in the previous videos. But at this time we do not have initialized the instance variables I and f. So compiler gives own default value to the instance variables. To the integer instance variables, the compiler gives the default value 0, and to the float instance variables, the compiler gives the default value 0.0. In this line, we are declaring a variable of type add. Here the variable a1 of type add will be a reference variable which will contain address of an object. But in this case, here we are not using the new operator while declaring the variable a1. And so we are not assigning reference address of any object in the variable a1. Here the variable a1 is the local variable in the stack frame of method main. Notice that compiler does not give any default value to the local variable. Does not matter the local variable is primitive variable or reference variable, the compiler does not assign any default value to the local variable. And we already seen in the previous sessions, we cannot use a local variable before assigning it. So here we are declaring a reference variable which we are not assigning. That's how we cannot use the reference variable a1. After this line, we are calling a1.showData. If you call a1.showData, then the compiler will throw an error because the local variable a1 is not initialized. So in this line, it will be error. In the next line, here we are writing a1 is equal to new add. So here we are assigning the address, the reference of newly created object into the reference variable a1. After this line, using the reference variable, now we can call the method showData. That's how we call a1.showData. When you call a1.showData, or in general we can say when an object calls a function that is setData and showData, then their stack frame will be created on the given stack with main, and their local variables will get stored in that. We will see this type of codes with animation in the next video. But here our main focus is on the instance variables I and f when the instance variables I and f are not initialized. So when we call a1.showData, the stack frame of the showData will be created in the stack, and that stack frame of the showData will contain the local variables of the method showData. Here inside the method showData, we are not declaring any local variables. Inside the body of the showData method, we are printing variable I and variable f. And we know that the variable I and variable f are instance variables. So the question is, if a class can have more than one object, then which object's instance variables are supposed to be printed here? Means if there was 10 objects of the class add, then whose I and whose f are supposed to be printed here. If we use the instance variable directly inside a method, then the object whose reference variable are used to call the method, that object's instance variables will be printed here. Since here we are calling the showData method using the reference variable a1, so the instance variables I and f of an object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1 will be printed here. The instance variables of the object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1 has not been initialized with a value. The compiler provided default values for the instance variables I and f of an object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1 will be used here. The compiler provides the default value 0 for the integer, and the compiler provides the default value 0.0 for the float. That's how when the reference variable a1 calls the method showData, it will print I is equal to 0 and f is equal to 0.0. After that, using the reference variable a1, we are calling the method setData. Similar to the method showData, the instance variables used inside the method setData are the instance variables of an object whose reference is stored into the caller reference variable. So the same object whose instance variables we have printed here. Now using the setData method, we are assigning new values to the instance variables of that object. When we call the setData method using the reference variable a1, then writing here only I belongs to the instance variable I of that object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1. And writing here only f belongs to instance variable f of that object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1. The actual argument 5 will be copied into the formal argument x, and the actual argument 6.7 gets copied into the formal argument y. Here the x and y are the local variables to the method setData. In this line, we are assigning whatever is stored into the local variable x to the instance variable I of an object whose address is stored into the reference variable a1. And here we are assigning whatever is stored into the local variable y into the instance variable f of an object whose address is stored into the reference variable a1. So the instance variables I and f of that object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1 now gets changed to 5 and 6.7. Finally, using the reference variable a1, we are calling the showData, and this line will print the instance variable I and f of an object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1. We know that the instance variables I and f of the object whose reference is stored into the reference variable a1 now gets changed to 5 and 6.7. That's how after this statement, when we write a1.showData, it will print I is equal to 5 and f is equal to 6.7. So here we come to know that when we do not initialize the integer and float instance variables, then the default value provided by compiler. The compiler provides the default value 0 to the integer instance variable, and the compiler provides the default value 0.0 to the float instance variable. Compiler does not provide any default value to the local variable. And if you do not initialize the local variable, then the compiler will throw an error. Let me try this code practically. Open calc.java. And this is the code. Let me save and compile it. Java C, calc.java. Compiler throws an error. Variable a1 might not have been initialized. Here we have not initialized the local variable a1, and without initializing the local reference variable a1, here we are using that variable. So let me comment out this statement. Without initializing a local variable, we cannot use that. Does not matter the variable is reference variable or the variable is primitive variable. Now after declaring the variable a1 of type add, here we are initializing that variable. And after initializing that variable, we are using it here. That's how in this line, the compiler will print I is equal to 0, f is equal to 0.0, because till this line, the instance variables of an object whose address is stored into the reference variable a1 has not been initialized. So the compiler provided default values for the instance variables have been printed here. Here we are assigning new values 5 and 6.7 to the instance variables of an object whose address is stored into the reference variable a1. And after this line, we are printing the current value of an object whose address is stored into the reference variable a1. Let me again save and compile this code. Java C, calc.java. Compiles fine, then run it. Java main, it runs fine. First time it prints I is equal to 0, f is equal to 0.0. And the second time it prints I is equal to 5 and f is equal to 6.7. If you do not initialize an instance variable, then the compiler provides default values to them based on their data type. In the previous example, we have seen what the default values has been assigned by the compiler to the integer and float instance variables. But in this example, we will see the various default values provided by the compiler for the various other types of instance variables. This is the class add, which have instance variables of type integer, float, character, byte, long, double, short, string, and add. A class can have instance variable of same type. But in this case, the instance variable m will be a reference variable. The instance variable s of type string is also a reference variable. In the method main of class main, we are creating an object whose address is stored into the reference variable a. Using the reference variable a, we will try to print various instance variables of an object whose address, whose reference is stored into the reference variable a. Here we are trying to print the instance variable I of that object. Here we are trying to print the instance variable f of that object. Here we are trying to print the character variable c of that object. So let me check the output. When we try to print the uninitialized instance integer variable, then by default the compiler will provide the value 0 to it. That's how printing a.i prints 0. Similarly, printing a.f prints 0.0. If we try to print the uninitialized instance variable, which is a character, then that character will be printed here, whose Unicode is 0. Similarly, when we try to print byte and long uninitialized instance variables, then it will print zeros. If we try to print uninitialized double and short instance variables, then they will print 0.0 and 0. If we try to print the uninitialized string instance variable, that will print null. The default value provided by the compiler to the uninitialized instance reference variable is null. And similarly, since the instance variable m is also a reference variable and the variable m is also uninitialized, that's how the compiler provides the default value null to the variable m. That's how while printing a.m, it prints null. But if these variables I, f, c, b, l, etc., if these variables were inside the method main, then the compiler shows error. Because if these variables were in the method main, then these variables were the local variables. And there is no default value provided by the compiler for the local variables. Let me execute this code practically. Open calc1.java and this is the code. This is the same code as we seen. Let me save and compile this code. Java C calc1.java. Compiles fine, then run it. Java main. It runs fine, printing a.I is equal to 0, a.f is equal to 0.0, a.c it's not printing anything because the character corresponding to the Unicode 0 cannot be printed. a.b is equal to 0, a.l is equal to 0, a.d means double is equal to 0.0, a.sh means short is equal to 0, a.s means string is equal to null, and a.m is the variable of type add is equal to null. Let's see what the default value will be provided by the compiler to the Boolean instance variable. Here the class add contains only one instance variable of type Boolean. Then after we are creating an object of type add and the address of this object will be stored into the reference variable a of type add. Finally, we are accessing the instance variable b of an object whose address is stored into the reference variable a. We are printing here value of a.b. Since we did not have provided any default value to the instance Boolean variable b, so the default value provided by the compiler will be printed here. Let's run the program and see what the default value has been provided by the compiler to the instance Boolean variable. Let's compile it. Java C calc.java. Compiles fine, then run it. Java main. It runs fine and printing false. So the default value provided by the compiler to the instance Boolean variable is false. That's all for this video guys. Don't forget to like and share this video. Subscribe this channel if you are new and leave your valuable comments in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.